here we have to graph y equals cosine of x plus pi over 2. Now we can predict for this graph when we see something in with the x, in with parentheses, that does mean that we're going to be shifting our x values. So this graph will have a horizontal shift. And the only thing we want to keep in mind for that is you will have your tricky x, which I will talk about in a second. Regardless of what kind of shift is happening, you will start graphing the problem the same way, identifying the amplitude and the period. So our amplitude is our a value. That a value is going to be found right in front of your sine or cosine. And when you have nothing there, that just means that really there's a 1 there that they did not type in. So our amplitude is 1. Period, this one has a formula for us to follow, 2 pi over b. And our b value is going to be found when you have a horizontal shift right here in front of your parentheses with your x. Again, with nothing there, we know that b must equal 1. So 2 pi over 1, or our period is 2 pi. All right, so we've got the size and the shape of our graph. Now we just want to look at what kind of shifting is happening. So we think about horizontal shift and vertical shift. Now again, that horizontal shift, if you have something happening inside with the x, so an x plus something or an x minus something, you will have a horizontal shift. Now the tricky x, it's x plus pi over 2, but that means we are going to shift in the opposite direction of that plus sign. So tricky x means shift to the left, and we're going to shift to the left pi over 2. So this is that c value, which gives us our horizontal shift. Our vertical shift can be found either at the beginning or at the end of your equation up here, separated by a plus or minus. So if you had a plus 2 or a minus 5 off on the end, or at the beginning, then you would have a vertical shift. Since we have none of that happening, there is no vertical shift. All right, so we're going to start by graphing just the amplitude and period, and then we will shift our points to the left pi over 2. But first, let's just get the size and shape of our graph up here. The amplitude is 1, and a cosine graph is going to start by going through the amplitude. So I know my first point will be up there at a 1. Then I look at the period and say I have to go over 2 pi, and that's where the end of the cycle is. Oh, the other thing to keep in mind, this is the shape that we're trying to get on our graph. That's your cosine cycle. Halfway between those two will be down here at a negative 1. So I've got the 1's a negative 1, and then just the 2 spots where you cross the x-axis will be halfway between those values. All right, so from here, we are ready to shift our graph to the left pi over 2. Now pi over 2 on our graph, we need to figure out how many spaces that's going to be. Our x-axis is labeled in terms of pi. And if from here to here is pi, we need to know what pi over 2 is, so that's going to be half that distance, or just 2 spaces. So point by point, if I take this one, I'm going to shift it to the left 2 spots. This next one to the left 2 spots. And you can just see we're shifting everything to the left 2 spots for our new graph. The way that I kind of organize my work is by using x's and points. That just helps me differentiate in the end, so I can see where's the original graph, where's my new graph that I just shifted. Whatever works for you guys, organizational system you come up with would be great. So there's one cycle of our cosine graph shifted to the left pi over 2. Now we just need to get another cycle on here. Sometimes we have no problem just looking at the graph and figuring out where the next points will go. If you're looking for something that'll work every time, we can pay attention to what our period is. When your period is 2 pi, you can take your points one at a time and go either to the right or to the left 2 pi and plot that same point in the graph or in the cycle before or after it. So for example, let me get rid of those arrows. If I take this point and I go to the left 2 pi, that's 8 spaces, which takes me over there somewhere. So that's off the graph. This one, however, when I go to the left 8 spaces, or 2 pi, is on the graph. So I know that is it's corresponding at the same point in the cycle before it. This one down here, if I go to the left 8 spaces, puts me here, and so on and so forth. And you can get the same points in the cycle before or after if you just count by the period. So there's our graph. We shifted to the left pi over 2. We remembered tricky x for your horizontal shifting. If you see an x plus, shift to the left. and we have a nice smooth curve. Make sure that it does look nice and smooth. If you plotted a point in the wrong spot, a lot of times we can visually catch it and fix it. So there you go.